Hi, I'm Erin Uiagalelei, and I'm an autism mom. I have almost 20 years of experience navigating services, biomedical approaches, and advocating for my son. Through all of this, I've had so much personal growth and learned about the power of perspective. My intention on this show is to share ideas, build community, and remind you that you aren't alone on this journey. And maybe even help you see more in your child and yourself. So let's do this. Let's grow through autism together. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Erin Uiagalelei podcast. Oh, so exciting. I'm Erin. I'm so happy and so grateful that you're here with me. I have lots that I want to share. So I guess let me just start by saying that I have a son. His name's Noah. He's autistic and he's non-speaking. He's 17. And as with any teenager, we've experienced a lot of things together. I've learned a lot from each other, that's for sure. And then with him having autism, we've really experienced a lot of challenges. And through all of that, I've come to really realize how much the relationship that I have with myself can affect my perspective about different things and really the relationship that I have with my son. And so in doing my own inner work, it's really helped me learn how to let go of some of the guilt and overwhelm that can come from being a special needs parent. I've definitely been in a place in the past where I was totally consumed by the autism diagnosis and it affected everything in my life. And so going on this journey of doing my own inner work has been tremendously helpful in so many ways. And so my intention for this podcast is to share my journey so that way I can inspire and maybe empower other parents who are in similar situations. I really want to help you see your kids for all that they are, for you to have more joy in your life, to build such a strong, beautiful connection, because I feel like me working on myself has given me all those things. There've been so many people in my life who have helped me and supported me. And I really want to pay all that love forward. And I feel like this is one of the best ways that I can do it. So I'm hoping it'll be helpful for you. I guess maybe I should start by sharing a little bit about my son, give you a little bit of background so you kind of know my story. So Noah's my firstborn. I have two kids. I have my son, Noah. He's 17, and my daughter, Ilana, who's 13. My pregnancy with Noah was super easy. I loved being pregnant. The birth was fine for the most part, like no complications or anything. First year, all the milestones were met, except now looking back, there were a few things that maybe might have maybe raised some questions or things to look into more. So one of the things was that in his first year, he wasn't walking yet. But I was working at the time, and so when I would come home from work, I would carry him and hold him every chance that I got, and he loved being held. So I wrote off the fact that he wasn't walking yet because I thought, well, I'm holding him all the time. I'm not giving him the opportunity to develop those skills yet. Another thing that maybe could have raised some red flags or some questions was that he wasn't pointing with his index finger, but he would gesture at things. So it was communicating what he wants. But I've come to learn that pointing is really an indicator that something could be going on. And then one of the last things was when he was a baby, I would sing to him and I would rock him, but he really liked me to do hard bouncing, really, really hard rocks. And I remember thinking, should I be rocking him this hard? But it just seems so soothing for him. And now I know about the proprioceptive system and the vestibular system, and his body has high needs in both of those areas. And so now it makes sense that he wanted to be rocked so hard. But at the time, I had no clue. And so everything other than that was great. He babbled, he was very interactive. And then, like so many other people, once he got the MMR vaccine, he regressed. I don't know if that's what caused it or not. that's like a whole nother side thing. Like, I don't have time for it. Like, let's move forward. So he regressed. He stopped babbling. It wasn't that he wasn't engaging. We would play peekaboo all the time, or like put our hands up, be like so big, and he would do it and we would laugh. And it was almost like I could see in his eyes he's taking it in, but he wasn't responding outwardly the same way. And at the time, I didn't really know anything about autism. I had heard the word, didn't really know what it was. But as I said, I was working at the time. And my sister in law was babysitting him, and she cared for her mom, who had been a special needs teacher for 30 years. And when he lost those skills, she had said it might be worth looking into, because she was telling me all of these signs. And I'll be honest, at first I felt really defensive. I didn't say anything to her, but inside, like as I read about autism, I was like, well, any of us could be autistic. But there was something in my gut that was just like, just lean in, just learn more, just move forward and find out. And so I learned everything that I could about autism at work. I would get everything I needed to get done in like an hour time at work. And the entire rest of the day, I would be doing research on autism. But even doing all that and learning and knowing the possibility was there, I don't think I really accepted the fact that this could be real. This could be a diagnosis that my son has. I don't think I really accepted it until we went to the OT, and we had like assessment for fine motor and gross motor and all these things. And at that appointment at the end, I asked, do you think there's a chance that my son could have autism? And they said, well, I can't make the diagnosis for you, but there's a lot of signs that I'm seeing that it looks like he probably does. And so we finally got an official diagnosis right before his second birthday. And I think my husband, Mao, hearing it directly from somebody else, that's when he was able to finally accept that, okay, our son has autism. And at the time when they diagnosed, they called it mild autism. But looking back, like, what does that even mean? He's non-speaking and he has apraxia. And if you're not familiar with apraxia, that's basically you can't get your body to do what you want it to do when you want it to do it all the time. And so the apraxia and the inability to verbally communicate clearly has has changed. Like at school, he went from a mild autistic class to a severely autistic class because of his struggles with communication, because of his struggles to control his body and be able to clearly express and show what he knows. And so I think that these labels are irrelevant, and I don't think that they mean anything. I think there's so much potential in every single one of our kids. There's so much in them. And so, yeah, I'm not a fan of the labels. Anyways, back to my story. So, at the time of diagnosis, the regional center recommended 40 hours of ABA, and then every week we'd go to OT. And I was one of those parents, like, I don't want to worry about relying on other people to work with my son or him going to all these different therapies for a really long time. So I was in every ABA session, every OT session, learning as much as I could. I would learn it, I would apply it during the day. I was teaching my family, my friends, this is how we're supposed to do things, because this is what they're teaching me, because these people are the experts, right? So they know what they're doing. Even though looking back, my gut in a lot of instances was telling me something different. And I so wish that I could go back and just follow my gut. But here we are. I was meant to go through that because I had a lot of learning and unlearning to do, right? So he was doing ABA, he was doing OT, and simultaneously I was doing a ton of research about the biomedical piece and nutrition. And I have my degree in nutrition, and so I'm a really big believer in the power of food and healing the gut. And so I researched all the diets and I picked the most extreme diet because I thought he's little and I have so much control over what he's going to consume. And if I start with the hardest thing, then we can build on top of that. And so I chose to do the specific carbohydrate diet and eventually the GAPS diet. And I did those diets till my son was 11 or 12 years old. And when I mean we did the diet, like I was hardcore. Like at school, like I let them know, do not give him anything. If you're having a party, I'm going to send special like homemade treats or something. And I'm not going to lie, like the diet was hard. It was hard. I stopped working so that I could really do this diet. But I spent so many hours in the kitchen making food and it was a lot. And then even in starting the diet, because it was so restrictive, there was pushback from different people and I really had to overcome that as well. And it was hard. But before starting the diet, my son would bite his hand. And when I'm talking about bite his hand, I mean biting it, breaking skin all the time. He would bang his forehead on things and he had like a little knot on his forehead. Doing that diet for like the first few weeks like was hard because he's detoxing, but I had read about it, researched, so I was expecting that first 2 weeks to be tough. But after getting over that hump, even though things weren't like super different or way better, he stopped banging his head. He hasn't banged his head like that ever since we started the diet. So I'm so grateful for that. He was still doing some self-injury, biting his hand, but it wasn't as intense or as frequent or last as long, not breaking the skin as often as he was because his poor hands, they're so scarred up. But even now, he still does do biting. A lot of it seems a bit more sensory. I also tried just about every biomedical approach that I could afford doing. I even applied for grants and I had a GoFundMe page to raise money so that we could see a DAN doctor, which was like the big thing at that time, autism specific doctor to help with all things biomedical. But even in doing all that, we did a lot. We did a lot. Like nothing seemed to move the needle that much. And like I think back and I'm going to be honest. I wonder if pushing so hard to try to quote unquote recover my son, like how much of his childhood was stolen from him because of that. Because I became so focused on like everything had to have like a purpose, like it has to be working on something. Even when we were playing, there are always expectations and analysis going on in my mind, and instead of just being. And so I wish that I could go back and kind of change some of that. But it definitely does make me more aware of myself now because I can still get caught up doing that. And I have to mentally kind of like catch myself. And then I can shift and just be, and things start feeling better in the interaction. Woo. But, during this time, sorry, I'm such a crier. So just be ready for it. But during all this time with the diet, the biomedical, the ABA, like all this stuff, I could see and I could feel like no one understands everything. It's not a lack of like understanding. And a lot of times it wasn't like a lack of capability, like things that we would do in ABA, he could do all of them, but he wouldn't do them in 8 out of 10 trials. And at the time we did ABA, it was very discrete trial based. So like they're asking him to do the same thing 10 times in a row. And it has to be 8 out of 10 times that he's able to do this during this one session before we can progress to another goal. And like in my gut, I felt like, what the heck? This is not right. Like I would get annoyed doing that. And I could see the frustration. Like, you're asking me again to do the same thing again, really? And my strong-willed boy, he wouldn't. But now that I know about apraxia, because I didn't know about it then, I think a lot of it could have been due to apraxia for him to repeatedly do the same thing over and over. ABA was like a whole journey within itself, but I did it for like 6, almost 7 years, like intense ABA, because I thought, well, that's what the experts are saying that we're supposed to do. Like, this is the way that we're supposed to approach things. And I was trying to trust that, but I could just feel like, I don't know, maybe it's not right for my son. So around the age of 9, I started exploring other behavioral therapies that were out there. And I ultimately decided to transition to RDI, which it's called Relationship Development Intervention. And it has a completely different approach than ABA. And it's the first time that I heard about presuming competence. And presuming competence is believing that somebody with autism has the ability to learn, to think, to understand. It wasn't that I didn't think that. I did believe that, but to be able to put it into words was so empowering, and it helped me start to shift my perspective mentally and ultimately how I was interacting with my son. Instead of being like, you need to do this and it needs to look exactly as I'm picturing in my head, there was so much more flexibility, so much more like a natural approach to how we work together, how we do things. It was less about demands like ABA and more about an invitation to come join me, an invitation to participate. And I think that really helped to take some of the pressure off of both of us, because then his ability to participate increased. It was where he wanted to join versus I have to. And I think it feels so much different in the moment, and in the experience, so much better. And so I'm really grateful for that shift. Things started to feel more in alignment with what I felt in my core. Um, and then around, I want to say age 11 is when puberty hit, and it hit hard. Oh gosh, it was so hard. Like that first year. Oh my gosh, the self-injury, like the biting, it started happening so often and so intense. Noah just seemed like he felt so uncomfortable in his body. And I was, oh my gosh, I was trying anything and everything to try to help ease some of that discomfort, even just a little bit. And like, it just felt like nothing was helping. I want to say like that first year, I probably cried at least once every single day for a year. Yeah, if not more, because I just felt so helpless. It's like the more it seemed like I couldn't help, the harder I would push. And I ended up getting to a point where I felt like, oh my gosh, this overwhelm and this helpless feeling, it's totally consuming me. It's totally affecting everything in my life in not a positive way, that if I don't take my foot off the gas, that I'm gonna completely burn out. And I can't do that, because then what does that mean? There's no way. I cannot let that happen. And I felt like I was on that ledge of like, if I keep going forward, I'm gonna fall off. And so it was like I was catching myself before I totally lost myself. But like at first I questioned, well, does that mean like I'm losing hope, or that I'm still not gonna try different things? No, not at all. It just means that I'm gonna slow down. I'm gonna slow down and I'm gonna make space for something else, because it's not sustainable what I'm doing. And so I'm just going to take a little breather and take a little break. And so, like, we still were mostly doing the diet, but I got a little more relaxed. And it wasn't that big of a difference if he had something that wasn't like on the diet, or at least if there was like a negative effect, I can anticipate it so it didn't feel as hard. And I think it was around that time that my best friend, she introduced me to the world of podcasts. And the first one that she recommended was Tim Ferriss interviewing Brene Brown. And dang, that interview was so good. So good. And I think that's probably what opened the door for me to start my own journey, like on personal development and doing inner work and all those things. I've listened to lots of personal development and functional medicine and, of course, autism podcasts. I think eventually I started listening to mostly personal development because I started getting so much value from it. It took me probably a good year and a half before I actually started putting some of the things that I was learning about into practice, because I didn't have the capacity to do anything. But once I had created space to actually start trying things started getting better again. I found like when I started being more self-reflective and more self-aware, that I started really understanding how much control I actually have over my life. Because before it felt like life's just happening to me, I don't have any control. But when I started understanding like there's things that I can control and there's things that I can't control, and learning how to navigate both of those things in a way that served me and approach things intentionally started helping shift things for me. Another thing too that made a huge difference is that, before then I was so hyper focused on all of the challenges that we were facing. And it was really hard for me to see the good things that were there, to let myself acknowledge progress we were making. But I started being intentional about really trying to look for the things that are going right, the things that are feeling good, and acknowledging it. And it started making a huge impact. And I try to really, especially on the days that are hard, really try to be mindful about focusing on the good things versus just the challenges. And acknowledging that, like with Noah, you can tell it feels good for him too. And it feels good for me to acknowledge it for myself and then to share it with Noah and see his reaction. It heightens that good feeling for me and it builds this connection. It's so amazing. So that's one of probably the biggest lessons that I've learned, taking time to acknowledge the good stuff, for sure. Something else where I learned a lot, I signed up for a course so that we can learn how to help Noah communicate using a letterboard, poking letters on a letterboard. And so it was Flourish Communication that we signed up for. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm signing up for communication. But I got so much more out of that course than I could have imagined. Yes, we definitely learned communication skills, 100%. But we also learned about how valuable community is. Like I have my family and my friends, but most of the people around me, they didn't have a child with autism. They did their best to offer support, but they didn't know what it was like to walk in my shoes. Dang, I'm gonna get emotional again. But these parents in this class, like, they get it. Like, you get it. I know you get it. If you're listening to this, you get it. And there's just something about sharing with somebody who gets it, or like holding space for somebody else who gets it. That's so meaningful, and you get so much more out of it. When I was young, I connected with a lot of other parents who had kids with autism. And then I got so into all the things that I got to do because we're working on things and we're fixing things, right? That I kind of pushed that to the side. And in this program, like, it really connected me back to that and showing me, like, reminding me how valuable and how much I needed that as much as I'm growing. I want to help you grow. And I just want us to grow through autism together. So until next time, I'll talk to you later. Bye.